To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not talking about physics, I'm talking about American history. And today, we're going to talk about the equal and opposite reaction to the Gilded Age, an era known as the Progressive Era. As a quick review, the Gilded Age in American history lasted from roughly the 1870s through the end of the century. It was categorized by the massive growth of the industrial economy, which helped contribute to rapid urbanization, lots of immigration, ruthless pursuit of profit, labor unrest, political corruption, and laissez-faire approach to government was all commonplace throughout the Gilded Age. That all began to change with the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era in American history took place between the 1890s up until about 1920. It was characterized by social, political, and economic reforms aimed at improving the lives of American citizens, especially those living in urban areas. During this period, the movement known as Progressivism gained momentum and people sought to address the problems of poverty, corruption, and inequality. Reformers sought solutions through government regulation, including trust busting, environmental protection, women's suffrage, and workplace safety laws. In other words, progressives were not a monolith. The era also saw the rise of muckrakers, journalists who exposed the harsh realities of life for many Americans and helped to build public support for reform. Let's start with those crusading journalists, the muckrakers, by taking a look at a few of them. Ida Tarbell was a journalist who wrote a series of articles on the Standard Oil Company that was run by John D. Rockefeller. She exposed the company's monopoly and unethical business practices. Lincoln Steffens was a journalist who wrote articles about the corruption in city government, including police departments and local politics. Jacob Riis was a journalist and photographer who documented the squalor of poverty in New York City's tenement neighborhoods in his book, How the Other Half Lives. Ray Stannard Baker was a journalist who wrote articles about the problems of labor and brought much attention to the injustice facing African Americans in the Jim Crow South. David G. Phillips argued that United States senators, who were not directly elected by voters at the time, served the interest of powerful monopolies rather than their constituents. Progressive reformers sought to address the issues exposed by the muckrakers using the government. This marked a significant turning point in American history. Previous generations would have scoffed at the idea of using the government to improve human welfare. Progressive reformers believed that with all the changes brought on by industrialization, it was necessary for the government to change as well. This can be seen most directly at a state and local level, where progressive reformers passed legislation to clean up what they viewed as corrupt and ineffective government. Examples of such state-level progressive reforms include initiative, referendums, and recalls, which allowed citizens to introduce legislation, vote on laws directly, and in the case of the recall, remove unpopular elected officials from office before the end of their term. It is at the local level where we can see the creation of offices such as the city manager that was designed to take politics out of the day-to-day operations of city government and weaken the power of political machines. It is also at the state level where progressive reformers enacted many workplace safety laws designed to protect workers in the industrial economy. As a result of reforms at a state level, it wasn't long before state leaders became national figures. Two examples of this are Wisconsin Governor Robert La Follette and New York Governor Theodore Roosevelt, who would eventually become the first progressive in the White House. On a national level, progressive reformers scored a major victory in 1890 with the passage of the Sherman Antitrust Act, the first piece of meaningful legislation aimed at regulation of monopolies in the United States. Even more impactful would be the ratification of several constitutional amendments that aligned with progressive goals. The 16th Amendment created a graduated income tax. The 17th Amendment allowed for the direct election of senators, taking power away from state legislatures and giving it to the voters. The 18th Amendment prohibited the manufacture and sale of alcohol. Now, while some might find this surprising, remember that progressives wanted to cure society's ills via the government. And in the minds of many, alcohol was one of the great problems facing the country. Lastly, the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote throughout the United States. Finally, another lasting impact of the progressive era was the rise of preservation and conservation. Many reformers believed that the country's natural resources were being depleted at an unsustainable rate and sought to conserve and manage these resources for future generations. However, just like all other aspects of the progressive era, those concerned about the environment were not a monolith. Preservationists like John Muir, who founded the Sierra Club and played a crucial role in the protection of national parks such as Yosemite, believed that nature should be left largely untouched, arguing that wild places were essential for human health and well-being. Conservationists like Gifford Pinchot, chief of the U.S. Forest Service under Progressive President Theodore Roosevelt, believed in the responsible use of natural resources, advocating for the conservation and sustainable use of forests, water, and other resources for the benefit of the public. He emphasized balancing the needs of the environment and the needs of the people. Whatever their differences, both preservation and conservationists played a crucial role in protecting the vast tracts of the American wilderness that we still enjoy today. Such long-lasting impacts is the legacy of much of the progressive era. Whether it's casting your vote for your senator, paying your income tax, living with the assurance that there are rules protecting your safety in the workplace, Americans today are living largely in a country shaped by the actions of the progressive reformers. Well, maybe not that whole prohibition thing, but we can talk about that later. Alright, so in this video we talked about the goals and effects of the progressive reform movement, as well as comparing the goals and attitudes regarding the use of natural resources in the era. If you enjoyed this or you found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and maybe I'll make more of them.